voice.
Just to hear your voice too. So the first question I ask is how would you describe the current state of the world?
Wow, that's an open-ended question.
Yeah.
The current state of the world, I guess, it's I think my immediate reaction to that is that we're recognizing, waking up into what I often call the terrible truth, waking up and realizing what's going on. The rapid rise of consciousness is creating quite a bit of division in humanity, amongst humanity, and that division is being exploited to some extent, but at the same time it's also attempted to be managed by those that have somehow appointed themselves as these draconian slave masters of the human population. There's, I believe, a rapid exponential awakening happening, and the control over humanity is slipping through the fingers that have been controlling it for thousands of years. And I think it's exactly where it's meant to be. Everything is happening as it's meant to be, according to some great architectural plan, and we're living out this paradigm in harmony with infinite number of realities and timelines, and realizing that we are the architects of our own destiny and our own future. And this is all part of the Great Awakening and the rise of consciousness, which I suppose is partially responsible for the rapid embrace of the Ubuntu Contributionism philosophy that I've been promoting and talking about for 10 years now, since 2005, while there's suddenly such a rapid embrace of that very simple philosophy.
So what do you see then as the forces at play here? Obviously, like you mentioned, there's struggle here. Do you see this as being an internal struggle reflected in the outside world, or do you see an outside force creating an inner conflict? How do you see what's really going on here? Where's the core of all this struggle or conflict, do you think?
I think it's all of the above. It's outside and the inside. I mean, I think we're part of everything in creation. With the resonance of source resonates in every atom in our body, and the energy that makes up the atoms in our body is the same energy that makes up everything else in the universe. So we are inextricably connected to everything in creation. So how it manifests and plays out in this density, in this realm, in this physical form, is I guess part of the struggle and the challenge that we face as humanity to realize who we are. Why is it that we're on this planet at this point in time and going through these trials and tribulations and conflict, and yet amazing visions by so many visionaries of a utopian future. So it is the never-ending question that I believe many great minds have spoken about for millennia and continue to speak about, trying to get the population of the planet to see beyond the veil of deception and realize that these forms that we occupy in this density, these physical forms, are probably of our own doing, and which for many people is a difficult concept to swallow.
Yeah.
This is the big debate and the big question that haunts New Agers or seekers of truth. How to describe this stuff with an inadequate language? How to try and connect to the morphogenetic field, to download all that information and process it, to share it with others and see where it resonates. this is the time where all of this stuff is happening, and people are waking up and connecting to this field of knowledge and information that is out there, that we are all inextricably connected to.
So do you see there as being a grand purpose? I mean, it seems like for one thing, it seems like we do need a pressure on us, whether it's in the form of mortality and death, the ultimate pressure, or just even a deadline. It seems like we need pressure to focus our attention. And it seems like we're facing the most pressure. I don't know. I can't see actually the history of mankind. I can just say that it seems to me this is a very intense. There's a lot of pressure from every direction coming onto the individual. How do you see? Do you see that as being a grand purpose for this?
I actually don't see that as being a grand purpose for that at all. I see that as being a hijacking of the grand purpose, a hijacking and a distortion and a manipulation of the grand purpose by conflicted energies, conflicted energy fields that became that manifested in physical form and became the antithesis of the great creation and the great source field of consciousness, the great source field of everything in existence, and part of that is it's like a dissonance of the great creation, and some people call it the fallen angels, the fallen angelics. So I don't see that at all as something that needs to happen. I believe it's a hijacking of and a purposeful manipulation for the purposes of feeding an ego that is behind this conflict that we face. I certainly don't see it as the natural order of things, if there even could be such an expression. I use that expression a lot, but if you really had to get philosophical about it, that expression itself becomes very problematic, because what is the natural order of things? What is natural and what is order and what are things? So, but I'd hardly ever try and get as deep into this debate as you just jump straight into the deep end. I don't think it's necessary to go into the deep end like this, because I believe that I suppose it's good to contemplate everything, but sometimes it's easier for me at times as well, when I feel conflicted and I feel stressed and I feel anxious, and I go through those things quite often at the moment because of what we do with the Ubuntu movement and all the pressure and anxiety and stress I'm under on a daily basis. I've got to remind myself that it doesn't matter. It's actually not there. I'm creating that for myself. There's only one outcome, and the outcome is what I want it to be. And I must tell you right now that I think I've had this discussion probably on 3 occasions today already, is that I'm now convinced more than ever before that I have manifested everything that is happening in my life right now. I have manifested with everything I've done in my life, even the books that I've written, my latest book, Ubuntu Contributionism, everything that's in that book is manifesting in my life on a weekly and almost on a daily basis right now. So I guess I can call myself a great example of how we can manifest the things in our lives that we want to happen. So I've manifested in the Ubuntu book that we're going to live in utopian societies on a united planet in harmony with everything. And I believe we're heading that way very, very rapidly.
So let me get into a couple of things you mentioned there, which is I and also ego. So
yeah.
How do you see... do you see the I that you're talking about as creating as your ego, or do you see the ego as something separate from yourself?
Look, to say that I don't have an ego would be lying. I would be lying. I try my best not to work with an ego, and I try to check myself as often as I can. Everything I do on a daily basis, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, is pretty much following the blueprint that I write about, which is not about me. It's about community. It's about unity within community, and then expanding that onto a larger scale, and trying to put together the global model, the first model for the rest of the world here in our little town. So I understand that we all have egos, and every now and then I get sucked into that. I get sucked into it probably all the time without even realizing it. But I try and check myself all the time and remind myself that it's not about me. It's about I'm connected to everyone else and everything else, and what I resonate will affect everyone else. And I guess this is how I've manifested all the things that are happening on a daily basis. And I'll give you an example. I've manifested in the book that I wrote on contributionism that sooner or later our municipalities are going to start failing, and we're going to have to come up with a plan to unite the people and overcome the failed municipalities in the provision of services and so forth. Well, that's happening in my town right now, as we speak. You know, and from a year ago, when I first addressed some of the municipal workers and the ANC, very staunch ANC members, who saw me as some sort of a white guy who they didn't trust too much, suddenly I'm addressing the striking municipal workers who no longer want to listen to anyone from the ANC regime because they realize they're a bunch of con artists, crooks, and thieves, and they're listening to me, taking advice from me, and applauding me at the end of my little suggestion to what we should be doing with our town, posting it as a question and a recommendation, not as a directive, and getting unbelievable feedback of absolute support and unity, and that's just one way that I've projected this reality that I write about. So now we've got a complete support. When I say complete, we've got very strong support from a lot of the people in our town based on the number of petitions that we've had signed for the various activities that we're involved in for the community, not for me, and strong support from the municipal workers. So it's unfolded so perfectly. I couldn't have written the script any better. No Hollywood scriptwriter could have ever written the script like this. And it goes further into the realms of science and technology. You know, right now I'm not talking to one, I'm talking to five scientists and inventors, some of whom haven't even finished high school, that have developed alternative energy devices. Right. And it's not that, and remember, I've been talking about energy, or you may not be aware of this, but I've been talking about free and alternative energy.
Hello.
Hey, Randall.
Hi there. You all of a sudden you cut out.
Yeah, I had a bad line there.
Yeah. But it sounds like there's a lot in every area of science, in every area of religion and spiritual activities. It seems like there are people like yourself coming out that are putting a different angle, a new angle on an old science, an old way of seeing things. And the core of it seems to be the same thing: community and individual within oneness.
Yeah, it's I call it unity within community, and saying that only out of unity comes infinite diversity. This is one of the statements I repeat over and over again. Only out of unity can you achieve infinite diversity. And sometimes people get confused by that because they say, well, you know, this model of yours looks like it's going to be like we're going to all become clones and drones, all look the same, do this, eat the same stuff, and nothing can be further from the truth. It's exactly the opposite. Yeah. With unity, people working in cooperation as opposed to working in competition against each other. The moment you start working in cooperation for the greater benefit of everyone in your community, and then expanding it to the extended community and so forth, eventually your country and then the whole world. The moment you start doing that, you're creating so much abundance. We cannot fathom the amount of abundance we will create on every single level of our existence. We can't comprehend the abundance because of our capitalistic mind being poisoned for so long. So unity within community, only out of unity comes infinite diversity. And one of the nice ways of trying to explain to people that still struggle with that concept is think about your body. Your body, see that as a community of trillions of cells. Those cells don't fight each other for supremacy. Those cells work and coexist in harmony. Those cells are broken down into different types of cells, the brain cells and skin cells and your eyes and your liver and your kidneys and your bone cells and blood cells and thousands and thousands of different types of cells in your body, millions of different types of cells in your body, working together in clusters, not fighting. Your heart cells don't fight your kidney cells, and your stomach doesn't fight your skin, and so forth. It all works together, although they are different, unique cells. They work in cooperation with all the other unique cells for the greater benefit of the whole community of cells, which is the body. So that is a wonderful and a very simple analogy for people to understand that if we just start looking at our communities in that fashion, we can achieve anything we set our minds on.
So I hope you don't mind that this project kind of explores the core of that issue. So my questions might be kind of personal and philosophical to some degree. So when you have a moment of internal conflict, what do you do? How do you notice, and what do you do to center yourself?
I have moments of internal conflict many times a day at the moment, and the thing that gets me through it is just remembering that we're on this amazing journey with hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people around the world that are now following what we're doing and what Ubuntu philosophy and contributionism is all about. That we are now here in our little town building the model that so many people are looking at. We're going to be putting in a free energy device into our town. I mean, I'm saying it because this is what's happening, and I'm not going to hold back on it because of fear of some sort of, Illuminati backlash. This is prophecy. We're living out the prophecy, so we've got to be strong, and we've got to have absolutely no fear on any level, and project this reality without any fear. And this is what we're doing. We're going to be installing a free energy device into our community within the next 3 to 6 months, possibly even sooner. And it'll be hopefully, as if all things go according to the plan, the first example of this contributionism philosophy. So I remind myself of all these things that we've achieved over the last 10 years, how things are progressing on a daily basis, how those that are trying to undermine us and badmouth what we're doing and attacking me personally and so forth, how that is failing. It's just because it is an attempt to undermine this, I believe, cosmic consciousness that we've tapped into, and I seem to be a carrier of this message, one of many carriers of this message, and but implementing doing the hard walking, and as difficult as it is, and it is very, very hard. I don't think people understand how tough it is, and I don't often talk about this, but it's at this stage, I believe it's probably the toughest job in the world, if you can call it a job. It's not a job, it's a calling, but it's the toughest calling in the world, to walk the talk on taking people from a money-driven, capitalistic, consumerism, hoarding kind of mentality society, and making them leave that behind and move into a community where they cooperate, and moving away from the use of money. It's a tough job. So I remind myself of the successes we've had, how far we've come in the last 10 years, where 10 years ago I couldn't have this kind of discussion with anybody. Right. There was nobody out there ready to talk to me about this. A world without money? You got to be kidding. It's not possible.
Would you mind going into money? Would you mind? You have a good boat. I don't know how tired you are. I know it's a little bit later in South Africa right now, but you could have like a 20 minute sort of encapsulation of money that is just awesome. And if you could talk a bit about money, would you mind just rolling for a while?
Yeah. Money is an artificial construct. Money does not exist. It never has. It was an idea created by the ancient royal banking families and the priest kings in Mesopotamia and the Sumerian lands, because that's the oldest example of money that I've been able to find, about 6,000 years old, where the first bankers were the priest kings who who lived in their temples, and the temples became the first banks, and these first priest kings and the royal bloodlines, that's how far it goes. Back it goes, probably around 6,000 years. It goes back a lot further, but that's how far we can trace it actually physically with Sumerian clay tablets and recorded writing regarding that. So they started creating this thing called money as a tool of enslavement. And they've started using money and forcing people to have money and use money for all kinds of things instead of being enslaved physically. So remember, and I think that the movie Zeitgeist shows it beautifully, you know, that financial enslavement is still a form of enslavement. It may not be physical and brutal and violent with whips and chains, but it's even more brutal and violent because you can't see the scars. The scars are emotional, they're mental, they're psychological scars of enslavement through of humanity with this thing called money. So this money was introduced as a tool of enslavement, and that's its primary function. It is not there to aid humanity or to help barter and trade or step up from barter and trade and for people to survive. Those are all constructs that have been fed to us to confuse us and make us believe that money is an integral part of humanity and that we need money and we cannot survive without money and that money has always been part of human evolution. Absolute lies. There have been thousands and thousands of ancient tribes and ancient cultures that lived for hundreds of thousands of years without money, living in Ubuntu united communities where they had unity within their community and did everything for the community, which is doing it for yourself as well. But we're taking it to a slightly different level. So all the modern banking systems, we know the banking families' names by now. They're well recognized by everyone. The Rothschilds, the Morgans, the Schiffs, the Rockefellers, and so forth, and these families are the descendants of these ancient royal bloodlines that are still controlling the world through the supply of money, and they've ridden waves up and down, and sometimes they've been pushed out by wise men and women in the past, but they have such strong control through their financial muscle of countries and governments and priests and religions that they always somehow manage to wangle their way back into our governments and our parliaments and take control and take hold of our countries. So all our countries are not run by our presidents and are not run by the government. They're run by the central banks. It's as simple as that. The central banks dictate the economic policies. They're untouchable. They operate outside of the law. You cannot sue the Federal Reserve Bank of America. You can't sue them. Just like in South Africa, you can't sue the South African Reserve Bank. They got protection clauses written into the legal system. You cannot touch. They are untouchable. They operate outside of the legal system. And these are the guys that make the rules, that write the laws, that create the protection clauses in our legal system so they remain untouchable. So as long as that status quo persists, we will never get out of the slavery system. We'll continue being abused as a species. And this is really what we are now telling people, and many have come before us and before me, explaining it in great detail. I've walked the talk once again in the Supreme Court of Johannesburg, where I decided to go on that journey and learn the hard way by representing myself against the highest paid lawyers money can buy anywhere in the world, and representing myself and actually winning the argument, but the judges are paid off. They pass judgments in favor of the bank every single time. It was not possible for the bank to lose, because remember, once a bank loses a court case, that it sets a precedent. So banks, the legal system is so incredibly woven as a protection mechanism for the banksters and these criminals called bankers, that when banks feel they're going to lose in the court, they just withdraw and they settle out of court, and there's a non-disclosure in the settlement clause, and those cases never appear on the case record, so it never goes down as a precedent, and nobody knows about those cases, and most of the time they win. In fact, pretty much all of the time the banks win. So we're an enslaved species. Our countries are run by the central bankers, And until we change that, we're not going to get out of this slavery system. And the divide and conquer principle has been applied so absolutely brilliantly that and every crack and crevice of our human endeavor, of our activity, from the moment you're born to the moment you die, is controlled by money. It's spectacular. I was at a meeting this morning in our town, because we're now converting one of the community projects. We're converting a big a dilapidated hall into a boxing academy and a martial arts academy, which is really, there's great excitement about that. And our town used to be a very strong boxing stronghold for boxers, and it's completely collapsed in South Africa. So we're talking about the boxing and this, and everyone's very excited, and then suddenly somebody mentioned the dirty word, budget. Right? And the moment you mention the word money, and you realize that there are no budgets being allocated to the boxing academies and the boxing bodies in the municipalities. So we're going to have to come up with our own money and make this thing work for the community. Everything's controlled by money.
And it seems like money is drying up. Whoever's got it is just got it all pulled in right now.
Yeah, remember, but money can never dry up, because there is no money.
Right.
There is no money. Money is just, they just make it out of thin air. And this is still a concept that some people struggle with. They can't figure that out. They can make as much money and create as much money as they want. They can carry on playing this game forever and ever. They invented the game. They wrote the rules for the game. They're the guys with the unique and what's the word I'm looking for? Exclusive right to create money. We don't have the right. Actually, that's not true. We have the right to create money, to create our own money. We have the right to create our own promissory notes. And I've shown in some of my videos, and as some other people have around the world, how you can create your own money by creating your own promissory notes. It's a form of money and payment. So there is no money, and some people just struggle with that concept.
Don't you find it perplexing that these people who obviously have a rich history, I'm sure that they linearly can trace their roots back, like you say, thousands of years. These people probably have had this money forever. And they probably have a very good understanding of human nature and the world. Don't you find it a bit perplexing that there's deterioration everywhere, and yet somebody with real power doesn't seem to be doing anything to mitigate any of this? I mean, it just seems like we're being driven towards destruction.
Well, that's exactly the case, and I think there are many researchers and authors that have written about this Agenda 21 and all these agendas and project this and project that, which is really an extermination of the human race. Just think about what's going on in our lives, in our countries. You know, our skies are being poisoned with chemtrails. Our air is being poisoned with chemtrails that fall down, and the toxins in there poison our soil, poison our food, poison our water. Fluoride in the water that poisons our brains and our bodies. Every soft drink you buy hey Sammy. Every soft drink you buy, you're drinking aspartame and poisoning your body, and so it goes. It's unbelievable. We're under attack. Not now, Sammy. Not now. Okay. Okay. I'm talking to the man. Hold on. You must go back to the bedroom. Okay. Okay. You must leave me alone now. All right. That's a frequent trick of Sammy to come and see who I'm talking to. So we are completely under attack. We're under frequency attack. There's so many frequencies that are invading our body, invading our brain, invading our physiology, that are manipulating our emotions, the way we think, the thoughts we have. We are under absolute attack from every single conceivable area. Places of attack that we don't even understand, that we're not even aware of. Tools and technology that is being used against us and humanity that we don't have a clue that even exists. But what we have is our ability and our consciousness to recognize this and to actually stop it with our minds and not be fearful of it. It's the fear tactic that is used all the time, and it's probably one of the most pervasive and most successful tools against humanity, because it's the single thing that prevents us from, or prevents many people who are filled with so much fear, overcome with fear, prevents them from raising their own consciousness, from activating their DNA. It's their own fear. So we are doing it to ourselves. It is imposed on us. It is, there are external stimuli to drive this fear and fill us with fear, but ultimately we're the ones that choose to live in fear or to live not in fear, or live without fear. So I forgot what we were talking about. Sammy distracted me here.
Well, so how, I guess this is what you're all about. You're trying to make people aware of this and what you can do about it. What do you suggest to people to become aware? Obviously, it's not just intellectual. Where does change, real change, have to take place in order for things to really change?
Well, it starts with you. You decide. The remarkable thing is, Randall, that in the last 10 years, how I've seen the change in people that I interact with, and how they respond to this philosophy. It is absolutely amazing, where you can just see the shift in consciousness throughout a large percentage of humanity. And so we're talking about the fear and being under attack, and that's being used against humanity, and it starts with us. We choose. And everyone has their trigger point, and this is what I found out. It's spectacular. From the wealthiest people that I've met, arrogant, wealthy people, to the poorest of the poor, to the middle-class guys who are just so proud that they got that promotion and they can buy their house down in the suburbs that they've always wanted to live in, because that's their aspirational level is set. That's where it's set, right? If I only get this job and I can buy this car and live in that house over there, that's what I've been aspiring to, because that's what society has molded me into believing is a great achievement.
And that's a willing slave.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually, what I have found is that the middle classes around the world are the most difficult people to talk to about this world without money, and that money is bad and evil, and that we need to get rid of money and start doing things differently. The very wealthy people know it. They understand that money is just a scam, and they know that they can lose it tomorrow. And quite frankly, they'd give it all up if they could live in a utopian world where everything was available to everyone, because that's how it works. And we work in cooperation and not in competition. The wealthy people are actually a lot easier to convince. The poorest people are a walk in the park, because they're just so desperate. They just want to get out of their misery, and they know that the money system is wrong, because they feel, that they've been violated and their lives have been destroyed by this money thing. That they don't have any, and everyone else has got money and they can do things with this slave tool. So the wealthy and the rich, it's the middle classes that, boy, they're tough, because they just feel there's that pride and ego. They've just achieved and broken through or out of the ghetto, or just got promoted from the lowest level of the pyramid scheme in their corporation, and they're still aspiring to become the CEO 10 years down the line, and often they are the more difficult ones to get through. But what I've seen is everyone has their trigger point, and I'll give you an example. This is a really beautiful example. The poorer people, there's a great example where we are in the town that we live in, Waterval-Boven. It's mostly the poor people that don't have work, and are pretty much destitute, that are working with me, that are working as volunteers to set up the foundation for the many community projects that we are launching, and have launched some of them already. But it's the guys who live in the fancy houses that walk around and look at us. Well, the houses in my little town are not that fancy, but they're made of brick, right? And they're the ones that pull up their noses at what we're doing and say, well, it looks very interesting. I'll see how it goes. But what I found, for example, is this an acquaintance. He's not a friend, he's an acquaintance. But strangely, he was married to a girl that was in my class studying pharmaceutics. We graduated together. She has subsequently become the MD or CEO of a large pharmaceutical company here in South Africa. And you can imagine that comes with a large ego at the same time. Very, very, very large ego. I've had the pleasure of speaking to her on a few occasions, and you could just see there's tremendous amount of ego. Oh, what are you doing with your life? I'm the CEO of a large multinational pharmaceutical corporation. No idea what they do, what she's actually doing, and no level of consciousness. And her husband and her, too much money, too many houses all over the country, too many holiday homes, all the boats and cars and toys you can imagine. So, when I say something to them that is true, as we're talking about this, giving them some of the facts about what's going on, they don't know, because you don't earn as much money as we do. You don't have as many houses as we do. So how can we believe what you say? And then suddenly, I gave this guy a Foster Gamble DVD, Thrive DVD. Now, guess what? Foster Gamble is from the Procter & Gamble empire family, right? Pharmaceutical global empire. Foster Gamble says everything that I've been saying. Now suddenly, it comes from somebody that they would look up to and envy because of their wealth and status, and everything changes. It was amazing. It was like overnight the penny dropped for this guy, and he became like a reborn Christian. All he wanted to do is run around and make copies or send people links to watch Thrive and make copies and hand them out on the street corners and traffic lights. It was phenomenal to watch, and that makes me realize everybody has their own trigger point. It doesn't matter how poor or how rich you are.
That's an awesome story. I just spoke with Foster. I did an interview with Foster. He's great. He's awesome.
Yeah.
One of the last things I ask everybody is if you could give a public service message to humanity, what would you say?
Well, I'd probably tell them what I tell everybody when I tell them about the Ubuntu movement and then the Ubuntu political party as a political front to inject the virus of consciousness into the political beast. I tell them, remember that no matter where you are, wherever you live, the country belongs to the people, the planet belongs to its people. And our governments and the politicians that we voted are supposed to be the servants of the people. That's why we vote for them, to serve us. So remember, our government is the servant of the people. If they're not serving us, we need to remove them. Surely you're not going to allow your servant to dictate to you which bed you should sleep in, and that you may not walk in the garden at night time, or that you're not allowed to drive the car on a Sunday, or that you must pay so much for fuel. Your servant is not going to tell you that. You'll tell the servant how it's going to work. So let's wake the bloody hell up and realize that our politicians and our governments are not serving the people. They're not our friends. That they're the problem that is enslaving humanity. And they're answering only to one authority, and that's an authority that's higher than they are. And these are the central banks, these central bankers that have been running this planet for thousands of years. The only way we're going to overcome that is by recognizing these problems, recognizing the tools they're using against us and the strategies that they're using against us, and removing ourselves from that equation. If we stop using their money, they cannot control us. It's as simple as that. And we've got to start to realize how we start going about doing that. And there are a few simple steps that I propose. We proposed it in the elections in South Africa. The UK, Ubuntu Party UK, is participating in the elections in the United Kingdom on the 7th of May. Incidentally, it's the same date as the South African elections were in 2014. 7th of May is obviously a very important ritualistic reason why this is happening on the 7th of May. And realize, people, that we can get ourselves out of this so quickly. And it's in the small towns and small villages that you can turn this thing around. And we're showing by example how relatively easy it actually is. It's taken me 1 year to unite, I would say, more than 50% of the people in this town. All the key people that will make the decisions on behalf of the rest of the community, and the rest will follow. And it's taken me 1 year of work, hard work on the ground, walking the talk. And if I can do it in this little town, that has like 6 or 7 different languages. So already you got a problem. You got a language problem, right? Although most people speak English, but some of them speak very bad English. Not everybody speaks English. We have a divided community because we still separated into the white suburbs and the old black suburbs, the town and the township. We've got a community that is battered and bruised. We got 70% unemployment. People just living, just surviving day to day, and being desperate. And there's quite a bit of crime because of the unemployment and the homelessness. So, but yet the community is tightly knit. And the more I've worked with this community, the more I've embraced the community and opened my heart to them and shared everything with them, with the community. They have welcomed me and started to embrace me and started to share the philosophy. So, and they're now promoting the philosophy more aggressively or more actively than I am. So very quickly you can turn people that don't understand what you're saying into messengers of the same resonant message that you've been sharing with the community. So my message is that we can get ourselves out of this trap by recognizing what we have to do, start working the community projects, working together in cooperation, stop competing against each other. Whatever you do, start working in cooperation so it benefits not only you but your whole community, and identify the necessary projects that you have to put into place in your community. Start working on them as quickly as you can. Create a community kitchen to feed the homeless and the hungry so they feel that they're part of the community and they're not being marginalized because they don't have any money. And just put some of these things in place that we've started doing here and showing by example, as I said before, that you realize that it's actually a lot easier than we think it is.
Can I just ask you one personal question? A couple personal questions?
Go for it.
Was there a defining moment for you where things shifted, when your understanding shifted?
There was, definitely. It was 2005 when I was writing Slave Species of God, 2004, when I realized that money was not always part of the human race, and that money is actually a synthetically introduced tool of enslavement. That's when it dropped for me, and then I suddenly started thinking, well, if that's the situation, if that's the reality, that's a historic event that actually took place, what would a world without money look like? And the moment I had that thought, it was like I got smacked in the head with a pan of consciousness, and started asking all the tough questions. This is why I feel so comfortable. I don't care who you are, what organization or bank or government you're from. I've faced hundreds of thousands of questions over the last 10 years. Well, how's this going to work? How's that going to work? Oh, have you thought of this? I bet you haven't thought of that. I can tell you I've thought of most of the questions that the people have thought about and try and trip me up on or try and test me on, and we haven't been tripped up yet, or I haven't been tripped up yet. The philosophy has not been tripped up yet because it's a self-correcting system. So that was my defining moment, and I started when I realized that the world does not need money. I started to ask and wrote down, all the things. Well, how will this work? How will that work? And I forced myself to try and figure it out, and it took a long time in the beginning. Try and figure out how are we gonna create food and all the industries. How is everything going to work without money? And the more I was able to come up with solutions for a world without money, the easier it became to find more solutions. Up to a point now that I find it, I actually want people to try and trip me up. I want them to stump me because I want to make sure that I really, really understand this at its deepest core level. Right. That I've really embraced this universal philosophy of consciousness resonance, or resonance of consciousness, or unity consciousness, and I love it. I love being challenged on that, actually.
And I suppose as you form your community, as your community grows, it won't be all on you to find all the answers. There's so many brilliant minds that are set to their own tasks that would be totally in line with what you're doing as well.
Exactly, and that's actually probably quite often the answer, because I don't have all the answers, but I don't have to have all the answers. We just need to put the cornerstones in place to get the community started working together in cooperation, to create the Council of Elders, the 13 most trusted people in the town, in the community, to become the voice for the people and to guide the people and the community in the right direction, to make the decisions on behalf of the people that are best for the community and not best for individuals at the expense of the rest of the community. So the Council of Elders, once that is put in place, they will make the decisions on behalf of the people. And if the people don't like it, they'll tell the Council of Elders, well, we don't like your decisions. And so every problem that you have will be dealt with, not next month or next year, because you have to fill in the forms in triplicate and send it to some invisible office in Washington that never comes back to you. You go in the morning, you talk to the Council of Elders, and you say, well, we got a problem over there. We need to build a bridge across the river because of X, Y, and Z. And the Council of Elders are going to say, well, we don't really need a bridge there right now. Why don't we just, go around, because we're not worried about time. We don't need to save time. And we don't have the materials right now to build a bridge, or whatever their reason may be. Or they'll say, okay, let's build the bridge. Fantastic. And guess what you'll do? You'll go and get the people that build bridges, the engineers and the builders, and you'll build the bloody bridge. So that's how you solve the problems. I can't give you all the answers, but the community will come up with the answers on a daily basis, on an hour-by-hour basis if necessary. So it's really exciting. This is such a simple model. Like I said, it's a self-correcting system. It always corrects itself for the best outcome for the whole community, which includes the individual needs. And this is why I actually call it, this is actually the contributionism philosophy, is a philosophy driven by, it's a minority rule and not a majority rule philosophy. And that is quite scary to some people, right? Because when you say minority rule, they don't understand it. Because we've been so poisoned by majority rule and democracy, people don't understand the word minority rule. And I use that often just to freak them out a little bit, because make them think. Right. What do you mean minority rule? That's impossible. Right. And if you think about it for a little bit, imagine in a world without money, where every group, the guys that protect butterflies, or the guys that look after the right environment for bees, or guys that protect the erosion, or every group of interest group is an interest, and it's a minority group. There's obviously, right, they're not in the majority. Right. But what will happen is that every minority group's interests will be looked after. All their needs will be taken care of. They will have all the tools and scientific support and support from the community to do the best job they can for the whole community, to prevent erosion, to prevent mudslides, to prevent their butterflies being wiped out by some disaster, or the bees being wiped out by toxins. Every minority group will get everything they need so that they can perform their interests for the greater benefit of the whole community. So it becomes a minority-driven system.
Right. In contrast to what it is now, whereas our Minister of Environment or Minister of anything is businessmen or lawyers by profession.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Because it's driven by money. Here we're not interested in money. We don't care about money. We're doing it because that's what we're doing for our community. The guys that farm the food will farm the food. The guys that make the cheese will make the cheese. And everybody participates in the community projects. The shoemakers, everything that you do becomes part of the community project. And this is actually an evolution from what I wrote in my book. Because in my book, I was still stuck a little bit influenced by the current structure that we have now. In our societies, but that's going to change so dramatically that I hadn't even thought it through deeply enough to realize that everything we do in our communities, as a shoemaker or the carpentry or the metal factory or the energy generating or the fish factory, whatever it is you do, every one of those things will become a community project. Right. Because everyone in your community is going to have to contribute 3 hours a week. That's the model that I've structured. That's completely open and debatable. The community will decide in the end. But right now it's 3 hours a week to work in one of the community projects. Now you can imagine a town of 5,000 people. That's 15,000 hours a week that people will be working in community projects. You need a lot of community projects to put those people to work. So reverse engineer that thought process and realize how much you're going to create, the abundance on every level that you're going to create. 15,000 hours a week that people are going to be spending on baking bread, fixing the roads, fixing the sports fields, building recreational centers, just anything you can imagine that's for the benefit of the community. But that also includes the shoemaking, everything people are doing, because suddenly becomes a community project as well. And learning new skills, interacting with other people in your community, having a great time, not feeling the pressure that you're doing it for money, feeling elated and fulfilled because you're doing something, that you're learning new skills, interacting with people that you may not know very well, and realizing what beautiful human beings they are. And every week you may be learning something new. By the end, can you imagine how rich your community will become? Because everybody will know how to bake bread, how to do this, how to do that. You will have a community that is so conscious and so connected and so able and so skillful. We can't imagine that kind of society today.
And the contrast is so obvious that we're in a society of servitude now, is that can people imagine living a life where they're doing what they want to do every day?
Yeah. And the problem at the moment is still that there's still a lot of people that are putting themselves into that cage all the time. Right. They remain their own worst enemy by saying, oh, it can never happen. It'll never work. How are we going to get jobs? And how are we going to get money? How are we going to pay for things? You say, you're not listening to me, brother or sister. You're not listening. You're still stuck in the old paradigm. We're not looking for jobs. We're living beautiful lives, expressing our God-given talents, aiding our community, doing everything that we do is for the benefit of everyone in your community, which means it's for your own benefit as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. This is great talking with you.
Well, Randall, thank you. Thanks for taking the time, man. Appreciate it. Some deep philosophical stuff, but I guess one needs to cover that from time to time.
Well, I hope you find your rest, because every time I see you, whether it's on YouTube or something, you look intense. You look a little run down.
Yeah, I feel like that, I must admit.
Hopefully you find your joy and your peace as well.
Okay. Thanks Randall.
Okay.
Take care.
You too.